good afternoon or early evening or whatever it is. It is November the 14th, 2022, and I'm Jules the Thought. Welcome to my channel. Normally, we are talking about true crime, um, and this is actually just a heartbreaking story coming out of Iran. Um, all of this drama started back in October. There have been periods of history where the women of Iran and other Islamic nations have attempted to be seen more as human beings rather than, chattel. And so here we are in the latest round. Now, according to the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, as early as September, September the 16th kind of marked uh, the real start of the latest fight for women of Iran when Masa Amini was killed by the morality police in Tehran. This sparked an outrage among many, many women, young girls in Iran, but also throughout the world. The demonstrations that have been held connected to the death of Mahsa have been many, many different backgrounds, religions, races, countries everywhere, even Kurdish areas. People have been horrified by what took place. Now, then, you would think with protests intensifying and videos of women, coming out of Iran, these videos show women cutting their hair, they're tearing their hijabs off in the streets, burning them. All of these, make no mistake about it, are openly defiant acts of aggression against a political system that has so-called religious men sitting at the head of that religious party, and the women are doing burning these previous symbols of religious piousness, turn now abjectly political tools. They are acting out their anger that was sparked by the death of Masa Amini, but has now included the most horrific acts imaginable by a government that is feeling powerless in how to respond socially to a rebellion of young kids, basically, is what it's come to. So in Iran and other areas, Gulf states, the hijab is mandatory. Just like in Saudi Arabia, they have morality police. They roam the streets, making sure that everyone is in the mosque when it is time to worship. Now, I can't help but wonder if this is more about the kings of Islam that sit upon their thrones and demanding that, they have a captive audience, I suppose. But if they were doing such a great job, I'm wondering why they need morality police to beat people. And in the case of Masa, murder her, simply because she did not like the mandatory uniform for girls. So these protests began, as I said, on the day that Masa was killed. That was September the 16th. She was dragged away and beaten by Tehran's morality police because her hijab was on improperly. Now the the mullahs, the men, the male preachers, the government, they have been fighting and angry with one another, trying to figure out how do you bring an entire nation of women, teenage girls, children, how do you get them under control, basically, is the question. And now Iran and the morality police, well, they have dreamt up a new horror for controlling females. Now, I don't know about you guys. We hear an awful lot about racism and how institutionalized racism and how horrible it is. This may be a fairly good lesson that we're a bit out of touch here in the West as to what real slavery might actually look like. Um, for the newest horror, the newest horror is that the protesters, which are women, the protesters of Iran, who have already spent weeks in the streets, they have been beaten and brutalized in a way that you and I could never imagine. There have been more than 14,000 of these women arrested in conjunction with these demonstrations where women are tearing their hijabs off and burning them, among other things. The country's parliament voted overwhelmingly last week in favor of the death penalty. For who? Murderers? No. Armed robbery? No. Abusing little kids? Nope. The lawmakers think that it will teach the protesters, girls, a good lesson, and more importantly, it will deter others from joining the movement if their acts of defiance against the Islam can be punished with the death penalty. The protests have included women ditching their mandated headscarves, publicly burning them, cutting their hair, now punishable by death. Or the worst is holding up a sign demanding human rights for women in Iran. Imagine that. Imagine living somewhere where people now have the ability to kill you if you say something they don't like. If you use the wrong words, you can now be killed. If your haircut is not pleasing to the men in your home, now you can die. If you live in Iran, I want you to think about that a minute. I want you to think about not being able to make a YouTube video because somebody is going to decide that you had the wrong opinion, and so they shut your channel down. Or that you have the audacity to have an opinion that someone doesn't like, and so they call your job to shut you up. You think it can't get worse? I mean, this is petty. This little, having the wrong opinion, thinking illegal thoughts, this whole thing. We live in a part of the world where we just sort of laugh about it and think, wow, you're on a power trip, huh? These women, teenagers, and little girls are dying because they have the audacity to say, I don't want to cover. I don't want my hair down so long that it gets into the toilet. I am entitled to being treated like a human being because I am a human being. All of those now, in the last 24 hours, are now crimes in an Islamic country punishable by death. People are not being racist when they express concern about Islamist factions. That is not the same thing as Muslim, not by a long shot. You don't have Muslims in Germany running around with whips trying to whip people that aren't in the mosque when it's time to pray. No, the Islamic world, they know who the Islamists are. They know what the Muslim Brotherhood is. And now you have state-sanctioned murder if a girl's hair is cut too short. So far, those holding signs demanding human rights for girls, cutting their hair, refusing to wear the mandatory headscarf, thousands have been arrested. And among those thousands arrested are hundreds of children, young girls who are fighting for their futures. Iran is one of the world's last countries to execute juvenile offenders. And you know what the age of criminal responsibility is for Iranian girls? For Iranian boys, the age of criminal responsibility is 15. Guess what it is for the girls? 9. If a little girl is 9 years old, she can be held criminally responsible for not getting to mosque on time. But there's a little bit of catch here, a little, wiggle room in Iranian law. Under Iranian law, you cannot execute a minor if they're a virgin. I'm not making this up. I'm not making this up. This is the Carnegie Endowment. The roadblock being you cannot execute a minor if they are a virgin. The roadblock has been solved in the past and is now a practice that they will be using moving forward. In light of this vote for a death penalty for girls taking off their hijab, taking off their headscarf, cutting their hair, holding signs that say women are people too. Death penalty. How are they working around this loophole? I don't care if you say we can do the death penalty, but please, sir, please, Mr. Mullah, how will we make this 10-year-old, how will we make her follow our rules? Because under our laws, Mr. Mullah, you cannot execute a minor if they are a virgin, regardless of their age. Well, they intend to solve the problem by marrying the girls to prison guards. So they're going to marry the girls to prison guards who will be AR'd the night before the execution. This is a practice that has been documented for decades by respected journalists, by families that have been able to escape these barbaric assholes. Wrap your head around this. The age of criminal responsibility for boys is 15. The age of criminal responsibility for girls is 9. If a 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old girl gets arrested, cutting her hair, asking to be treated like a human being, burning her headscarf, she will be arrested. She will be given the death penalty with no real trial. And then they'll get around the Iranian loophole. You can't execute a minor if she's a virgin. They'll get around that by marrying her to her prison guard, who will then rape her the night before the execution. In 2014, Justice for Iran published a report on the organized rape of virgin girls that were awaiting execution in the country's prisons. This was a practice most often seen in the 1980s. The book details the practice as systemic. It was an acceptable form of execution, including the marriage in R of the girls. This was approved by the higher officials in the government. Islamic Republican leader Hussein Ali Montazira tried to speak out against the executions, and he held conversations with great detail in his 2000 memoir. I told judges not to write death sentences for girls. This is what I said. But they perverted my words, and they quoted me as saying, "Do not execute girls. First, marry them for one night and then execute them as women." A paramilitary militia member told the Jerusalem Post in 2009 that he was, as a prison guard, he was actually forced to take part in these practices. At 18, I was given the honor to temporarily marry many young girls before they were sentenced to death. I regret that. Even though the marriages were legal, I could tell that the girls were more afraid on their wedding night than they were the day of the execution. By morning, the girls would have an empty expression. It seemed like they were ready to die. Activists and family members are reporting that it is happening now in 2022, along with torture, beatings, and horrific abuse. TikTok has been instrumental in getting these stories and these changes in the law, getting it out to the bigger part of the world. But so far, mainstream media has refused to report on this travesty. Imprisoned women in Iran are asking lawyers for access to morning after pills because they are being subjected to daily R. Scores of protesters have already died. Iranian human rights non-governmental organization group claims that at least 326 girls have been killed, to include 43 children. 16-year-old Asra Panahi was reportedly killed by the Iranian security services after she was beaten in her classroom for refusing to sing a pro-regime song when her school was raided in October. Iranian TikTok star Hadis Najafi, 22, was shot dead by Iranian forces in September, and she was a part of this protest. Executions of these young girls are underway. 22-year-old rapper Saman Yassin, one of the more recent to be given the sentence for supporting the protest on social media. This new government ruling signed by, listen to this, 227 members of Iran's 290-person man parliament. Routine executions will increase exponentially as of today. Among those facing the potential sentence are students, lawyers, journalists, activists, brothers that are standing up for their sisters, and even more devastatingly, for their children. Various petitions have been started calling for the execution of Iranian protesters to be stopped, including to include one that I will post the link in the chat. The terms of donations, the NCRI Women's Committee aims to achieve equal rights for Iranian women. Money donated to them helps them improve and expand their efforts to support Iranian women's struggle. United for Iran empowers a growing global network of issue experts, coders, developers, and activists to create an Iran where civil liberties are respected. Their technologies empower Iranians to stay informed, voice their beliefs, stand up for values, and organize. Their campaigns raise public awareness and directly pressure the Islamic Republic of Iran to spare lives, release prisoners, and stop persecutions. The international community is also being urged to amplify the voices of the Iranian people. So follow and share any of these messages on social media. And I'm going to put up here. Here are a few accounts. Hold on. I'm going to put up some accounts that if you want to follow on social media, at least, you know, the more, I guess, Westerners that put their own opinions out there and bring it to the attention of the governments of the world, it's really the only way. It's really the only way to do it. I don't know that anything can be done now. The Chinese hegemony is going to be really strong at this point. The BRICS nations, they have gold-backed currencies, but you know, and Russia and China, Brazil, they're all friends to Iran. So I don't know how much it helps, but you would think that at the very least, those little girls that are being killed, they would hope that they would warrant a story on, you know, Fox News or CNN or MSNBC, something, right? But they're not. It is obscene. It is obscene. And our own government, where is the outrage on the Senate floor? You know, where is the outrage among the representatives talking to the, you know, where's the pressure that needs to be exerted on Iran? Like, you know what? The world is watching you guys. The world is watching you, barbarians, what you're doing to those children. And you'll never have a place on the world stage as long as you treat your people this way. But so far, just like in Afghanistan, it has been crickets. It's awful. It's absolutely awful. This power of the man in these Islamic countries is just getting worse. It's just growing by leaps and bounds. I think those of us that have been watching Foodie Beauty, I think as of yesterday, most of us are feeling rather horrified. You know, I hate to say it, but it's all the signs are there. She's okay. So here are three, and then here's a couple more. And you know, just to go on Twitter, and just, you know, say, you know, I stand with the women, I stand with the girls, I stand with the children of Iran. That's all you can do, you know. TikTok. They have been able, the Iranian government has not been able to shut the TikTok people down unless they can find them. If they find them, they kill them on sight. but they're taking their lives in their hands by streaming the protest and trying to get the story out to the rest of the world. Just what a nightmare they're all living through. All right. Okay. Hard to believe. It's hard to believe in 2022 um, that such a thing could be happening, right? I mean, the amount of bravery, the fearlessness that these women, girls, teenagers, the amount of bravery that they're demonstrating is just, if it doesn't make you tearful, you're not paying attention. You know, it's um, they know, you know, the girls and the women and the teen girls, they get it. They know what, how high the costs are, you know. The women are standing up. Uh, it's time for the men to stand with them in truth. So the activists um, associated with Iran and some of the Gulf Arab states and Saudi Arabia, you know, they say that these things will never change until the men speak up. And so far, the men they're cowardly compared to what the women are willing to do. Now, if you read the message boards, you know, they do say that it's not just women that have been arrested during these protests, that there are many young men that are a part of these protests that are trying to fight back. They try to protect the women. They fight against the police as the girls run away. Um, but you should see that whole. You should see the nation spill out onto the streets. You know, like they did in Egypt when they went against Mohammed Morsi. This is so obscene. This idea that, you know, a child as young as 9, 10, 11 years old not wearing a hijab properly, that she can be arrested, married, AR'd, and executed all within a 12-hour period. And we're, you know, it's a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare. All right, let me peek in on you guys. I hope you're all doing well. This was a real joyful story. I get that, but at some point, it's time to pay attention. It's time to know there's other important pressing things happening in the world besides what's happening with Russia and Ukraine, and those are important things. Don't get me wrong. We don't need to be in the middle of a nuclear war. But we cannot forget the plight of women in some of these Islamic nations. It's not racist. People are not being racist when they speak out. It's barbaric. I was living in Egypt when the front page news on the big Egyptian newspaper that the mullah from the biggest mosque, you know, in Egypt, in Cairo, had said that he had decided it was okay for women to work. This is in Egypt, progressive Egypt, secular Egypt, that he had decided it was okay if women worked outside the home as long as they were working with a family member. And so the way to fix that was for the woman, the woman who's working at this company, this, you know, whatever, to let the men of the company breastfeed from her. and then they would be considered family. This is the front page of the biggest newspaper in Egypt. A mullah, the top mullah. Shocking. Just mind it. And to be fair, the Egyptian people were mortified. Or they claimed to be. I assume they were, right? It is shocking that it's happening in 2022. Absolutely. It's shocking that it happened in 2022. It's shocking that it happened in Afghanistan, where we had been there for so long. We had made really important promises to the girls of that nation. You had women that had just finished medical school. They had signed up to be a part of the Afghanistan Air Force, and they were going to act as military physicians. And they were the first ones killed by the Taliban. We promised them. We promised them. We're really upside down in the things that we're supporting. We're really upside down. We're really confusing things, you know. People, the living, breathing people, the real live people being affected by these barbaric assholes, they matter. They matter. Whether they're girls or not, they matter. And those little girls that are getting arrested, they matter. They matter. They're being terrorized, brutalized to a point that they're welcoming death. Hey, Bex, how are you? God bless all the women who risk their lives for their future daughters. Absolutely, Bex, 100%. Hey, Nancy Drew, it is a terrible story. It is heartbreaking. Hey, Pam Frenchman, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Coming in late. Hi, Diane. It should be a crime against humanity. It should be a crime against humanity. And every nation on this planet should be screaming in rage against it. This should not be tolerated. This is incredible. It's absolutely incredible that we haven't had not a single world leader speak out about this barbaric crap. Not a single one. It's just incredible. Absolutely incredible. Hey, Denise. Afghan women have been put back 100 years at least, if not more, Denise. Yeah. The level of betrayal of the Afghanistan women, it's unforgivable in my opinion. It was not an arranged withdrawal. It was an abandonment. Absolutely, Jen. Yep. All right. So I wanted to draw attention to this. It's a horrific, absolutely horrific story. They've just passed the death penalty for, burning your hijab or cutting your hair. They just passed this law the last 24 hours. While there are little kids sitting in jail waiting execution. And no one has spoken out. No one has spoken out. Oh, absolutely, Bex. Unforgivable. I'm with you. Yep, 100%. Hey, Sundown Farms. Okay, so I know this is a really dark, heartbreaking story, but just because we don't talk about it doesn't mean it's not happening. And at the very least, talking about it and bringing it to the surface at least gives dignity to the women that are over there protesting. Let's at least do that. Spread the word. Tell people. Let them know the realities of what's happening over there, what they're doing to children. It's awful. Just awful. Thank y'all for being here. I appreciate it. I hope you have a good week. Bye.